My name is Daniel. I am from a small town near Krakow, Poland. For many years, I worked as a doctor in a local hospital. My job was good. The people were kind. But something inside me wanted more. Not more money, not more things. I wanted more meaning. I wanted to help where help was rare. One cold night in January, I found something on the internet. It was a UN program looking for volunteer doctors. They needed people in South Sudan, in a refugee camp. I sat there in silence for a long time. I could feel my heart beating fast. My hands were cold, but my chest was warm. I didn't speak English well. But I said to myself, this is the moment. This is the road. I applied the same night. 3 months later, I was flying to Africa. The plane landed in Juba. The air was hot and thick. Everything smelled new, strange, and real. A UN car picked me up. The driver's name was Moses. He was from Kenya. He smiled a lot and spoke English fast. I understood maybe half of what he said. I laughed when he laughed. That was enough for now. The camp was far. The road was dust and stones. We passed goats, children running, women with baskets on their heads. I watched everything. I was quiet, trying to remember the faces. The camp was big. Thousands of tents. The clinic was a long white building made of metal and wood. Inside, it was hot, loud, and full of people waiting. My first patient was a boy named Joma. He was 5. He had a fever and cough. His mother held him close. I smiled and said slowly, I am here to help. She smiled back. My English was simple. I used short words and clear hands. Sometimes I drew pictures to explain medicine. Sometimes I used body language. But every day, I learned a new word. Every night, I wrote it down in a small notebook. Thirst, rash, listen, better. That notebook became my second heart. One day, something happened that changed me. It was my 3rd week. I was working late. The sun was down. A man ran into the clinic carrying a girl. She was not breathing well. Her lips were blue. I took her in my arms and laid her on the table. Her name was Ao. She was 7. She had asthma, but she didn't have her inhaler. I asked her father questions in English. Simple words. He didn't speak much English, but we tried. I gave Ao medicine through a mask. I stayed with her for hours. At last, her breathing slowed, and her face turned pink again. Her eyes opened. She looked at me and said something I didn't understand. Her father smiled and said, "She say you are light." I didn't cry then. But that night, in my tent, I did. After that day, I was different. I wanted to speak better. I wanted to hear everything. I asked Moses to talk with me every morning. He told me stories. I listened, repeated, and asked questions. I watched movies with English subtitles on my phone. I played them again and again. One night, the camp held a small party. It was for the end of Ramadan. People brought food, and someone played music. I sat near a woman named Fatima. She was a nurse from Sudan. She asked me, "Do you speak English now?" I said, "Better than before." She laughed. "Then tell me a story." I told her the story of Ao. She listened and said, "You are learning the language of the heart. That one is most important." In my 4th month, I started teaching English to the children in the camp. We met under a tree. I used songs, drawings, and games. They taught me their language too, simple words in Dinka. I laughed more now. I dreamed in English sometimes. I was not perfect. But I was free. One day, I saw Joma again. He was better. He ran to me and said, "Dr. Daniel. Teacher Daniel." I lifted him up and laughed. That was the day I knew, I did not just come to give help. I came to learn. To grow. To become more. By the 5th month, the camp felt like home. Not because it was easy. It was never easy. But because the people were kind, and I was not a stranger anymore. My English was better. I could speak in full sentences now, and I could understand jokes. Even the hard ones. One afternoon, I met a man named Samuel. He was a teacher before the war. Now he helped run a small school in the camp. We sat on old chairs under a mango tree. He said, "Doctor, you are not just healing bodies. You are healing lives." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. Samuel gave me a book. A simple English book for children. It had short stories and bright pictures. You read one page every day, he said. Then come back, and we talk. I did. I read about animals, weather, and space. The stories were short, but they were magic. I learned new words like whale, thunder, moonlight. One story was about a boy who flew a kite higher than the clouds. I liked that story. I told Samuel, I want to fly English like that kite. He smiled and said, then let the wind carry you. In the clinic, I started talking more with my patients. I asked them their names, their dreams. One woman said, I want to be a nurse like you. I said, I am not a nurse. She said, but you care. That is what a nurse does. I smiled. I wrote that sentence in my notebook. One morning, something funny happened. I was with Moses in the car, driving to get supplies. I saw a monkey run across the road and shouted, look, a monkey is walking the street. Moses laughed so hard he had to stop the car. Daniel, he said, monkeys don't walk the street. They cross it. I laughed too. My English was still wild, like a baby goat. But it was learning to run. A few days later, there was a big storm. The rain came down like it wanted to wash the whole world. Water entered the tents. The clinic roof started to leak. We used plastic and buckets to protect the medicine. Outside, the children danced in the mud. I shouted, you will catch a cold. But they only laughed. In the evening, the power went out. I sat by candlelight, writing in my notebook. I heard voices singing. I followed the sound to a tent near the school. Inside, the children were singing an English song I had taught them, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. They sang it slowly, with soft voices. I joined in. For a moment, the camp was a planet, and we were stars. At the end of my 6th month, the UN coordinator asked if I wanted to stay longer. My plan was to go back home. But now, I wasn't sure. I called my sister in Poland. She said, you sound different. I told her, maybe I am. Maybe I found something here. During my last week, we had a surprise. A new team arrived from Canada, nurses, teachers, and one doctor. His name was Jordan. He spoke English fast, with a thick accent. I didn't understand everything, but I kept smiling and asking, can you repeat that, please? Jordan watched me with the patience. Later, he said, your English is not perfect. But you listen better than most native speakers. That made me proud. I said, I learned by listening, reading, and living it. On my last day in the camp, everyone came to the clinic. They brought small gifts, a bracelet, a drawing, a letter in English. Joma gave me a tiny toy airplane made from a can. So you can fly back, he said. I hugged him. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of the children. Before I left, I wrote one final line in my notebook. It said, language is not just words. It is the door to other hearts. At the airport in Juba, I looked at the sky. It was bright, blue, wide open. I was going home, but I knew this was only the middle of my story. When I returned to Poland, everything looked the same. But I was not the same man. At first, it was hard. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. No children running. No goats, no dust, no mango trees. The air was cold, the buildings gray. I missed the heat. I missed the noise. Most of all, I missed the people. My English was better now, but in Poland, no one needed it. I wanted to keep learning, keep growing. So I found a small group, refugees from Syria, living in Krakow. They needed a doctor. They needed someone who could speak with them in English. I volunteered. Every weekend, I visited the community center. I gave checkups, helped mothers with medicine for their children. But something was different now. I was not just treating fevers. I was listening to stories. One man, Ahmed, told me about his journey across the sea. He said, when we reached Greece, I looked at the sky and cried. Not because I was safe, but because I was still alive. I didn't know what to say. So I put a hand on his shoulder. I said, slowly, you are safe now. And you are strong. Sometimes, that is enough. My English grew with every visit. The children asked me to read them books. So I brought books from the library, picture books, fairy tales, stories of animals and adventures. We read together. We laughed. They corrected my pronunciation. I didn't mind. One girl, Layla, asked me one day, "Why do you speak English like us?" I smiled and said, "Because I learned like you. With books, with stories, with my heart." In the spring, I saw a poster. It was for an English storytelling competition. You had to tell a story in English, no notes, just your voice. My hands started to sweat. I looked at the paper and thought, "Daniel, are you crazy?" But I signed up. I wrote a story about my time in the camp. About Ao, the girl with asthma. About the day the children sang, "Twinkle, Twinkle." I practiced in front of the mirror. I practiced with the Syrian kids. Every time I forgot a word, I just kept going. The day of the competition came. The room was full. People from many countries were there. Some told stories about travel, others about love or loss. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the front. My heart was loud in my chest. I took a deep breath. And I spoke. I told them about dust roads, about buckets catching rain, about monkey jokes. I told them about learning English word by word, smile by smile. I told them, I went to help. But I was the one who changed. When I finished, there was silence. Then clapping. Then someone stood up. Then more. A standing ovation. I didn't win first place. But someone came up to me after. A woman with red glasses. She said, "Your English is not perfect. But your story is. And your voice is alive." After that night, everything opened. I was invited to speak at schools, to tell my story. I visited universities, libraries, refugee centers. I spoke to students learning English. I told them, "You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be true." I started recording audio stories too, short, slow, clear English stories. I posted them online. People listened from all over the world. From Ghana. From Ukraine. From the Philippines. They wrote to me, "Your voice is easy to understand. Your story gives me hope. I never planned this life. I just followed the road when it called." And then something happened that made everything complete. One day, I received an email. It was from Fatima, the nurse from South Sudan. She wrote, "Joma is healthy. He wants to become a doctor. He still remembers your monkey joke. And your notebook. We miss you." I wrote back. I told her, "Tell Joma to fly his kite high. Higher than the clouds." That evening, I went for a walk. I saw a boy in the park, trying to fly a kite. It was red and blue. The wind was weak, but he ran anyway. The kite lifted, fell, lifted again. I stood there, watching. And I smiled. Because I knew, whether in English or in silence, in Poland or Sudan, with books or bare hands, hope speaks in every language. And I was now fluent in that. A year passed. Then another. Life kept moving, like a river that never stops. But inside me, something stayed the same, the need to connect, to share, to speak from the heart. One morning, I got a call from the UN office in Geneva. They asked me if I would join a new program. It was a training program for young doctors who wanted to volunteer in camps. "We need someone to teach them how to work in the field," the voice said. "Someone who understands the work, and the words." I said yes. So I packed my bags. I flew to Geneva. For the first time, I wasn't going to help patients. I was going to help helpers. The young doctors came from many places, Mexico, Egypt, India, France. They were smart. Full of energy. Some spoke English very well. Some were shy. But they all listened when I told my story. On the first day, I asked them to write one word on a paper. One word that meant the reason they were there. I saw words like hope, justice, kindness, peace. One young woman, from Thailand, wrote, "Listen." That one made me smile. We talked about medicine, of course. About wounds and vaccines and emergencies. But we also talked about fear. About language. About what to do when you don't understand. I said, you can learn many things from a textbook. But not how to hold someone's hand when they're scared. Not how to listen to a mother with no words, only eyes. I told them, even if you speak only 100 English words, make them soft. Make them honest. People will understand. During that week, I met another man who changed my life again. His name was Andrew. He was a speech coach from Nigeria. His voice was strong, warm, and slow. He taught me how to breathe better when I speak. How to pause. How to let silence make space for meaning. He listened to my recordings and said, "Your stories are good. But your voice, it can be great." We worked together. He made me read poems, news articles, even jokes. He helped me shape my English not just with words, but with rhythm. With feeling. With air. I had learned English to speak. Now, I was learning how to speak to move people. After the training ended, I kept working with Andrew. I made more stories, more recordings. I wrote new lessons, short and simple, for people who were just starting English. But I also made videos for doctors going to the field, showing them how to explain medicine with gestures and drawings. One night, I got a message on my website. It was from a boy in Yemen. He said, "Your stories help me learn English. I want to be a doctor like you." I sat there for a long time, looking at the message. Then I replied, "You already have the most important part. You care. The rest, you will learn." That same week, I received an invitation to speak at a conference in New York. It was for medical workers who served in war zones. I was nervous. It would be my first speech in front of so many experts, so many native English speakers. But I went. On the day of the speech, I stood behind the stage curtain. I took a deep breath. I remembered Moses, and Joma, and the children singing under the tree. I stepped onto the stage. And I began. I spoke slowly. I told them how I had once said, "The monkey walks the street." They laughed. Then I told them about the girl who called me Light. And about the day I heard "Twinkle, twinkle," in the dark. I told them that English did not come to me through grammar books. It came to me through people. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then, applause. Later, a man from South Africa came up to me. He said, "You speak English with your soul. That's why it works." Today, I still work with the UN. I also record stories every week. I speak to learners all over the world, online, in person, in small classrooms and big halls. I tell them, don't chase perfection. Chase connection. And every time I open my notebook, the old one from the camp, I see the words I wrote in the beginning. Words like thirst, better, hope. They remind me where I started. So if you are reading this, or listening to this, and you are learning English, remember this: your voice matters. Your words are seeds. Speak them, share them, grow them. You don't need perfect English to change a life. You just need heart. And maybe, a notebook.